Cameron, thank you for joining us and thank you for being a part of this edition of Inside the Funnel. You're a Senior Director of Client Strategy and AI, which means you work at the intersection of AI, again, client strategy and centralization. In plain English that our grandmothers could understand, what does that mean that you do on a day-to-day basis? What does your job actually look like?
Yeah, thanks for having me. The job is kind of, nebulous. It's an interesting title. And really what I do day to day is I help all of our operators and customers rethink how leasing should work in like an AI native world. So rewind 2 years ago when we were more focused on centralization. Centralization was the hot topic in our industry. We as a company and, my team specifically would help advise our customers on how to leverage funnels technology and other vendors in the space as well to get the most out of their centralization journey and efforts. And then, as AI has become more and more of a hot topic in our industry specifically, it's always been part of our platform, but folks are talking about it more and more. My team has also shifted to, incorporate AI strategy into how our customers are leveraging the technology. So we're, as a company, expanding our product sets in AI, but that also means we have to consult our customers more and more on how to inject AI into their operational journey and get the most out of it for their teams, making sure that they're enhancing their teams rather than replacing it. So we can get more into that later on in the chat. So I think in summary, my job and what the client strategy team at Funnel here does is just make sure that what we're building actually delivers value to our customers, to their employees, and most importantly, the end renter and prospects. So we're customer obsessed here. In short, we're just basically advising our customers on how to make the renter journey most efficient and most enjoyable for their prospects.
So in your day-to-day, you've helped clients implement everything from leasing hubs to centralized operations to voice AI assistants. What's one way you've seen AI actually improve someone's day-to-day on-site? And what about what it does for renters?
Yeah, so I think actually the benefits of AI are quite similar to the benefits of centralization and vice versa. We always, when we consult with our customers on what the centralization change could look like or injecting AI into your traditional leasing workflows if you're not centralizing, they really have the same net benefit. And what you're trying to do is try to consolidate your efforts into one team, whether that's on-site, off-site, or in AI, right? And one thing that we view at Funnel is AI is actually a dedicated team within our customers' operating model. It may not be structured that way in our software or even organizationally, but it's very important to think about what AI can do as an extension of the team. So the improvements, what we've seen day to day, oftentimes, it's taking a lot of the work off the plate, whether it's communication-based or task-based. And we're seeing, more than half of communications overall for a property, but whether it's on prospect or the resident side, actually being completely automated for the agents. And we're not automating the super sophisticated, deterministic workflows that a human does best or that they really value in their day. What we're trying to do is help them focus on those more high-value human touch points and actually automate away the mundane or the qualification parts of the overall journey where, hey, they don't need to be sitting around on the computer at 1 a.m. answering voicemails, or they don't need to have a dedicated team that rotates after hours to make sure that they're always following up. What we do is, during business hours, obviously there's a huge lift and benefit for making sure they're not getting behind. But after hours, there's a huge uplift in, for a couple of our customers, more than 60 or 70% of tours and communications and the volume of the actual work is happening after hours. I think there's like two main benefits to that. There's benefits to our customers' employees, but more importantly, benefits to the renters. So for their employees, they don't come back, whether that's, they're closed for the weekend and come back on Monday to an inbox that's in the triple digits, or come in the next morning, after logging off at 6 p.m. the day before, they log back in at 9 a.m. and having, a couple dozen emails or voicemails or missed calls sitting there. Our AI, whether that's through email, SMS, or phone, tries to help get immediate answers back to prospects and to residents. And obviously, if it can't be done, or there's people out there that don't like interacting with AI and request, hey, I want to talk to a human, of course, we'll pass it through. And that close relationship of the AI and the CRM is super important to ensure that kind of transactional singularity to AI to humans. But then most importantly, to my prior point, for renters, I'm the type of person that is very willing to interact with AI, and I can get more immediate answers rather than sitting in a 25-minute contact center queue. Yeah, I can talk to an AI. They can be more helpful, and oftentimes they net a better result for humans in the long run, whether that's through the simple tasks of filling out preferences for a rental search or actually negotiating renewals. We've partnered with this new company, Sierra AI, and we're deepening the agentic workflows that we're doing within the funnel ecosystem. And a lot of the things that we're seeing is actually the AI, when you give it determinism and allow it to be more agentic, example would be in the renewal space, is actually performing at a higher rate than what humans do. They've seen this across a bunch of different other industries, whether that's insurance and adding, folks to policies or negotiating renewals for insurance rates. Similarly, for subscription services that they've run, the AI, given the proper guardrails, oftentimes outperforms humans from like a ROI perspective. So that's not to automate away the work, but making sure that the company is getting a better benefit, the employees are getting better benefit, and most importantly, the renters are getting a better experience and getting their inquiries, whether that's a leasing inquiry or like a resident payment inquiry, making sure they're getting answered expeditiously.
I think like our listeners are super smart, but I just want to make sure that everybody's following along and understands what some of the words that you threw out there mean. Can you just define what agentic and what agentic workflows mean within the multifamily space?
Yeah, I think agentic is the only word that may be buzzier than centralization and artificial intelligence in our industry. So happy to unpack it for you. So historically in our industry, AI meant, hey, just conversationality. Rewind 4 years ago, it's simple decision tree logic that us and a lot of other vendors in the space were utilizing at the time. Fast forward to 2025 with LLMs and OpenAI and Gemini and all these other variations of GPT powered models. Agentic is not just conversational, but it's actually doing deterministic tasks. So a very simple example of this that's been in our industry for quite a while, and we've actually been agentic, is scheduling tours on behalf of the leasing team, right? So when they're texting with a virtual agent or communicating via a voice channel with the AI, booking a tour and having it schedule that and confirming it and putting it on calendars is actually an agentic workflow. That's just, the 101 of what we can get to in our industry. And there's things further down the proverbial funnel where they can have more agentic deterministic use cases where they're adding folks to doing mid-lease changes, doing transfers, negotiating renewals. And those are things that the AI can handle without any human involvement. So I guess a long-winded way of saying giving the AI the power and determinism to complete tasks on the human's behalf that may necessarily not have had the capabilities to do previously when it was just conversational based.
Thank you. I think it's good to break down the buzzy words, even if they are buzzier than centralization in and outside of our space. Let's talk about skepticism. So what do you say to people who think that AI is just hype? Multifamily is not often known for being an industry that's out in front and leading, but I would say that a lot of the AI that is coming to the space is leading AI. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think every major, whether it's technology shift or operational shift, always starts with skepticism. And I hate keeping back to centralization, but I think it's very similar in terms of how we initially in our industry were skeptical of it. Over time, you went through the adoption curve, and now more and more folks are centralizing and having extreme impact to their operations, their NOI, you name it. And I think AI is similar in that sense. And as I mentioned, I think every shift starts with skepticism, but ultimately ends in like extreme impact. And I think AI is going to be one of those things in our industry that revolutionizes how we think about the overall leasing journey. It's not going to do anything crazy and go into like Star Trek Jarvis land or anything like that. But I think in the immediate, it will have, in the next 3 to 5 years, very direct impact to how we staff and operate properties. I don't think AI is here to replace leasing teams. I think it's actually here to remove the friction and keep them doing their best work. I think a lot of times, to some of my prior answers to your questions, folks are coming in and they're very overwhelmed, whether that's they're starting the day, they're starting their week, or hey, they go out in 4 tours and they come back to an inbox and a bunch of missed emails. I think centralization is helping erode and kind of make that process more efficient. But centralization plus AI, I think, is the ultimate catalyst to how we will revolutionize operations in our industry. I think Funnel specifically with our CRM and our AI are uniquely positioned to capitalize on that. So I don't think, it's my perspective, and I think a lot of our leaders here at Funnel think of it the same way, is we're not trying to replace team members. We're not even trying to reduce any team members. We're just here to help them embrace the technology and scale smarter and make their teams more efficient and make ultimately the renter journey more pleasant for the end consumer, being the renter.
Something that we hear from a lot of our partners or some of our partners is that like centralization and AI allow them to create bigger, better jobs for their teams. So really enhancing that experience and making sure that turnover stays low for our partners. So you've worked with operators of all sizes. What are you seeing as the biggest gaps and biggest aha moments when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I think the biggest gap would be whether it's, operational leaders or on-site team members or just anybody in, any industry at this point, since AI is such a hot topic across all verticals. I think the biggest gap is folks viewing AI as just a tool and not a teammate. We've seen it be more effective as, some of our customers have really clever branding for how they leverage their AI. Cortland's one of the folks that comes to mind. They call theirs Courtney, and I actually had the pleasure of joining them at one of their corporate offsites. And they actually had like a whole Courtney room and a cutout of Courtney, and people can go take selfies with Courtney. I think just embodying it as like kind of an extension of the team is one, a really great change mechanism for, affecting good change management. But two, it makes it feel more human from the agent perspective, but also more importantly, the consumer expected perspective. And if everybody's kind of viewing AI as a kind of that teammate rather than it's here to replace me, or it's just a tool where, hey, leads go there and then it'll tell me when it's ready for me to pick it up. I don't think that's the right way to approach it. Viewing it as an extension, just similar to the person sitting next to you in the office, you're chatting back and forth all day saying, hey, Hannah, how did Rachel, the renter, do on her tour yesterday? And having that visibility both into communication and history and kind of how we're both working that lead on property historically. And it's the same thing when it's now a human and AI. You should have that same visibility, conversationality back and forth, and full transparency into the overall journey. So I'd say that's probably the biggest gap. And then I think you asked about an aha moment. I think the biggest thing for me was, not to overuse the word agentic, but I think once I first saw AI initiate work, not just answer questions. So we launched some of our resident products in Q1 of this year, and it's actually initiating work in terms of collecting rent or pushing folks to a renewal sooner, or in the worst case, an NTV, depending on the market, sooner, and actually initiating work, not just reacting to work, I think was a really big aha moment for me. And we'll see those more and more, and they'll continue to evolve and grow into more agentic, true aha moments where I think my euphoric moment probably, hopefully coming in the next few months, will be when we have our first renewal signed that was completely negotiated by AI. I think that will be my future aha moment. But for right now, I think just seeing some of the cool stuff we're doing and actually initiating work was one of those moments that us and some of the customers that are using it today were like, wow, okay, I think this could really revolutionize how we're thinking about multifamily operations.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like the changes that we're seeing in those aha moments are coming faster and faster and taking less time to actually like impact renters, impact teams, impact our partners. We're going to switch gears here a little bit.
Yeah.
So before Funnel, you had a background in consulting, or you have a background in consulting, and you were a D1 athlete. How do those experiences influence the way that you approach your work day to day here at Funnel?
Yeah, I think twofold. I'll keep the initial answer short, and then I'll explain my background for it. I think consulting taught me how to think, and I think being an athlete taught me how to work. And I think those two things together have uniquely positioned me in my career to get the most out of myself, the most out of our products here at Funnel, and then also the most out of our team here at Funnel. So consulting, I think anybody that comes out of consulting, other than, folks here will always tease me and some of our customers too on the miles and miles of deck length that I make every time we have a meeting. And, I'll build a 50 slide deck and then only use 5 of those. Outside of that wonderful skill that I learned, half joking, it really did teach me how to think, whether it was thinking through a problem or thinking through the strategy of approaching problems. And I think, for most folks, and, especially within my organization, we always try to hire ex-consultants or folks that have similar backgrounds, where it just teaches you how to think about problems and allows you to really address those and unpack what may be actually causing an operational challenge or a technological challenge. And being able to quickly pivot, I think, is another thing that consulting really taught me. Is, you can even see it in my career here at Funnel thus far. I started off in centralization, then move over to sales and running our Greystar account. And now I'm back in client strategy, running our AI strategy as well. Being an athlete has really kind of allowed me to build that foundation to be able to interact in that capacity that I just mentioned. It taught me how to work. It taught me how to stay dedicated. We all know things don't go as good as it can sometimes. And I think being an athlete, that competitive fire in you, I think, always brings you back to, okay, we may have had a loss, or we may have not performed. We had a win, but we only won by 1 point. Like, always grounding yourself in, in football specifically is what I played. You play on Saturday, Sunday morning, you're right back in the meeting rooms, reviewing your tape and seeing how you can get better for the following week. And I think I take that same approach with our technologies here, and then also with the strategy team, just making sure that we're always trying to be better, no matter how good or bad we were the week prior. That can be applicable to all things, whether that's meetings, the technology, the products, the processes. I think there's a lot of lessons learned that I've taken from both my prior career experiences as well as athletic experiences.
Thanks for sharing. And I think that being on the team with you, we all see that. You have a drive to win, and also you're very good at asking questions that help people, like especially in your CAS and consulting background, get to the answers that they need to find themselves. So what's exciting to you outside of work, and how does that bleed over into how you show up at work here at Funnel?
Yeah, for better or worse, I think the first thing that comes to mind, and a bunch of my Funnel teammates will tease me, is I'm like a huge aviation nerd, and it's awkward to admit. So maybe even that you can like superimpose the picture of me at Funnel Forum, I'll give you permission to show that to the world. But I love aviation. It's one of my passions. I think that just keeps me busy day to day, whether I'm inside or just, fortunately, I love aviation. So when I travel, it's like a cool part of the job as well, getting to be on different airplanes, and that's super goofy. But from the athletic side, I always try to continue to keep sports as a primary part of my life. Golf, I think, is probably the main avenue that I go through most frequently, and the other ones would just be, the random one-off sports of a pickup basketball game or tennis or pickleball, something that I can play without getting too injured, not in nearly as good of shape as I used to be. So anything to keep me active and just keep that competitive spirit going. And then personally with, my family, I think we do a lot of things mostly revolving around food, whether that's cooking a meal at home, or going out to eat. We try to do that, a few times a week. So between those two things and Funnel as my full-time job keeps me very, very busy. So a little insight into Funnel, or into Cameron when he's not working at Funnel and wearing pink, is he's probably talking airplanes, hitting a golf ball, or eating food with his family.
That's great. Final question. What is something that you're excited about in AI that you think no one's talking about yet in multifamily? Think of this as like your crystal ball moment. Like, what do you predict becoming bigger?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think AI is going to revolutionize how we talk about operations in multifamily. It may not be in the immediate, and we may have smaller chunked wins from technologist perspective and also from an operational perspective for our customers. Small chunked wins over the next 24 to 36 months. But I think as we extend beyond that, and just think about and reflect back to 2021 when the first GPT model released, and you said, hey, go write me this really cool poem about X, Y, and Z. And you're like, oh my God. And now think about where we are today, where you're having really quippy interactions with a voice agent. It sounds human. I interacted with one the other day, and I actually asked it, I was like, are you human or are you AI? And that's just in a 24-month period, just showing how accelerated that adoption and innovation cycle is. I think if you fast forward another 24 and 36 months, we'll be doing things in multifamily that we hadn't even ever thought about. And I think a lot of our partners that we're working with, as well as our technology partners, are thinking this far ahead. And I think, going back to your agentic use case, I think is something, it's not that hot of a take. I think it's something that a lot of AI vendors in our industry and other verticals are talking about. But I think agentic use cases will have a very deep impact from a self-service perspective, similar to having a really, great UI on your mobile app for a resident experience. I think it'll be a similar interface where AI will be just as big, if not bigger, of an interface than a mobile or web portal that our customers' residents are using today. So I think if I had a crystal ball moment, 36 to 48 months from now, that'll be pretty widely adopted. There still may be some laggards or go through the typical innovation cycle on that adoption, but I think having agentic use cases in multifamily will be something that completely revolutionizes how we staff properties, how we operationalize properties, how we underwrite deals. I think it'll be really impactful, similar to how centralization has done that thus far.
Awesome. Thank you. I can't wait to see all of that come to fruition in the next 24 to 36 months. But thank you for joining us and sharing a little bit about your story and about what you see as the future of AI and multifamily.
Of course. Thanks for having me.